County Commission meeting of April the 22nd will please come to order. We have the Reverend Hugh King from the First Church of Nazarene to do the invocation, please. Good morning. And we have Wesley Davis, Vice Chair, will do the pledge. Please stand.
Let us pray together. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this beautiful day that you have given us. The psalmist wrote, "This is the day the Lord has made. We will rejoice." And we thank you for the life that we have, the privilege that we have to be citizens of the United States of America. Father, today we would pray for our military, our troops that are serving around the world. We pray for their protection, your watch care over them. And Father, we pray for our nation in these times of decision and choices. And we thank you for this commission, these folks who have chosen to serve. And I pray that you will lead them and guide them today as they take care of the matters on this agenda. And we think of Solomon, who prayed for wisdom. And I pray that you'll give them wisdom as they consider what is in the best interest of all the citizens. And may we honor you. Thank you for the privilege of being here. Amen.
Amen. Join me in the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Do we have any additions, deletions from the agenda or emergency items?
Madam Chair, I'd like to add under my items 13E about the, I think a misunderstanding on the workshop that was requested for impact fees.
Is it an emergency?
Well,
Or you just disagree with me?
no, I can put it on next week's agenda if you'd like to do that.
Okay, why don't you do that with some backup, because I don't really reflect what all of us said. You want to do that?
Okay, this is
Thank
a nice
you.
light agenda though, so.
I do have something.
Yeah, you do.
Travel for the to go up for the land swap in Tallahassee. This is on the 102nd Terrace, aligning with 101st Avenue.
Would you like that under your matters?
Actually, the consent agenda is fine unless y'all want to discuss it. I just need to add that, or I'd like to
Okay.
add that.
Okay, we'll add it to the consent. And 8J, I have a item that will be omitted. Is that correct? Okay, may I have a...
Jay?
Be brought back at a later date.
Oh, okay. All right.
May I have a motion?
Motion approved.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you. We have proclamations and presentations. The first one is a presentation of proclamation honoring Warren and Virginia Swearing.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had the opportunity to attend the grand opening of the Daisy Bridgewater Hope Center, their new facility up in Wabasso, and they have some concretables there, added to the library, some computers, and just a wonderful asset to the community. And a lot of this has to do with this proclamation that I'm fixing to read right now, honoring Warren and Virginia Swearing. Whereas Warren and Virginia Swearing are longtime residents of Indian River County, and whereas Warren and Virginia Swearing played a significant role in making the dream come true when the Daisy Bridgewater Hope Center opened in 2001, volunteering, encouragement, and support of programs wherein safe, informational, educational, and recreational activities are provided for the youth of our community. And whereas Warren and Virginia Swearing are visible, vocal, and persistent advocates for the Daisy Bridgewater Hope Center and the youth in our community, and for the development of programs and services to meet their needs. And whereas thanks to Warren and Virginia Swearing for their dedication and personally donated funds, the unique facility of the Daisy Bridgewater Hope Center now provides 2 new classrooms, a state-of-the-art computer room, and a media room, and landscaping. And now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County that the Board recognizes Warren and Virginia Swearing for their efforts and continued contributions to the Daisy Bridgewater Hope Center on behalf of the youth of Indian River County, dated this 22nd day of April, 2008, and signed by all 5 county commissioners. Thank you, Mr. Swearing. Come on up. Got another. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Speech.
Yes, please feel free to say a few words for.
Daisy Bridgewater Hope Center would not have happened without the cooperation of this commission. Our ability to be in the Douglas School and to be in the center of the Wabasso community all at the same time is nothing short of a miracle, except that we have Verna Wright, Daisy's daughter, who led us through this whole thing with the endless cooperation of this commission and the county administrator. Thank you again, and personally on behalf of my wife and me, thank you.
Oh, thank you. We have another presentation, proclamation designated April 26, 2008 as Arbor Day. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I believe we have Dave Wayment and Corey Richter here with the Sebastian Soccer Association to receive this. Proclamation designating April 26, 2008 as Arbor Day. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees. And whereas the holiday, called Arbor Day, was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska. And whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world. And whereas trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, lower our heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, provide oxygen, provide shade, and provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable resource, giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. And whereas trees in our county increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community. And whereas trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County, Florida, that April 26, 2008 is hereby designated as Arbor Day in Indian River County, and urges all citizens to celebrate Arbor Day and to support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands, and further urging all citizens to plant and care for trees to gladden the heart and promote the well-being of this and future generations. Adopted this 22nd day of April 2008, signed by all 5 county commissioners. Gentlemen, what are we doing for Arbor Day?
Corey Richter with Sebastian Soccer. We're having a celebration on Saturday. We're developing our new fields up by the North County Pool on the buffer preserve there, and we're proud to say we've got grass now. It's plugged, so it looks like a desert right now, but by the fall we plan on being out there. The company that's taking care of it assures us that we'll be out on our new fields in the fall. This is a huge step for us. This started back in 92, 93 with Fran Adams when we worked with the county to try to secure the property up there, and it's been a huge project, and it's finally coming to attrition for us, and we're proud to say we've got over 200 trees out there, so we're trying to be green wise too. It's a lot of open space, obviously, with soccer fields, but we're putting trees all over the property too, and we wanted to celebrate Arbor Day with the true meaning of it by doing it.
Right. Hopefully those will be some fast-growing trees so the kids will have some shade out there.
Yeah.
And also, Madam Chair, if I could, we had the situation where several trees from the widening of Phase 4, 512 were in the right-of-way, and many of those trees were relocated up the drive going into the North County Aquatic Center, into the soccer.
Correct. A lot of the palm trees and stuff, yes, they moved into, and they look beautiful.
They
Thank
were.
you.
Yes.
That was a great addition for us, and it helped you guys out too, because you didn't have to take them far.
It was some smart thinking, so I would commend staff for that.
Yeah, whoever thought of that staff-wise, that was a great addition.
And I got some compliments from the community towards staff on that, so I wanted to pass that along.
And thank you for your service to the community.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck. Thank you.
Yeah, please.
Are you not cleaning up?
I got an auction then I will.
Don't worry, we're going to clean up a lot.
Just one more thing, as I was reminded by Commissioner Davis there, we are having our Arbor Day celebration is 1 o'clock up at our new fields, and I believe all of you have been sent an invitation. You're invited to come and celebrate with us. There will be an honor guard, and we'll have a short ceremony there at 1 o'clock, and some light refreshments and stuff will be served. So anybody who wants to come out and see our new fields is welcome to come out Monday or Saturday, 1 o'clock.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have the consent agenda. Anyone want to pull anything from the consent agenda?
Madam Chair, I'd like to pull item F.
F, all right. Anybody else? I'll have a motion then,
Motion approved.
as amended. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. F,
Yes, Madam Chair, this is a right-of-way acquisition off of County Road 512. My concern here with staff is that we've kind of upped the offer twice above appraised value and have negotiated a price, and I guess I'm okay with that price. My concern is having to pay for the seller's attorney fees and other damages. I think if we've increased our offer about $34,000, almost 30% above the appraised value, I'm not sure why we're picking up all their attorney fees.
Good morning, Commissioners. Bill DeBrawl on behalf of the County Attorney's Office. Again, this is an action in eminent domain, and by statute, the county, as the condemning authority, is required to pay attorney's fees and costs of the opposing party. And this attorney's fee was based on the amount of benefit gained for the client. 33% of the gain from the county's initial offer to the final agreed upon price.
Did we actually go through eminent domain with this one?
No, we did not. We did make the formal offer, and we were assisted with counsel on this with Paula Castro and LaRue out of Clearwater. They helped us with the negotiations because we were proceeding to eminent domain, to filing the lawsuit.
All right. And do you feel this is justified then, Bill?
Yes, sir.
Move staff recommendation.
Second.
thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes 5-0. Public items, property exchange. I have something written on that surgery, and no one is here for this item.
I wasn't aware of anything. Was there a note for Mr. McKellar's?
Yes, I have it written. I don't know who wrote this on mine, so I don't know.
Mr. McKellar is here.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Glad to see he appears to be in good health also.
I'll cross that off. I don't know who did
The
that.
notice of his illness is a little premature, I guess, huh?
And I'm feeling okay too, so we're all in good shape.
Okay, we're just checking.
Okay.
Thank you. Again, Bill DeBrawl on behalf of the County Attorney's Office. This is a pretty straightforward property swap. If we could take a look at the Elmo to see the properties that are being considered here. You can see Lindsay Road, 49th Street down at the bottom, and then 31st Street, or 31st Avenue is in the crosshatch here. This is a acre for acre swap. The county is going to go ahead and pick up right-of-way along 49th Street and also access and more right-of-way along 31st Avenue. In exchange, we're going to go ahead and give this top part here to Mr. McKellar. He is the landowner of this area that we can see here. This is just a square foot per square foot swap. We're picking up additional right-of-way. He's getting compensated for the amount of right-of-way that we're taking from the bottom half up to the top half. This was advertised twice. once a week for the last 2 weeks in the newspaper. You aren't required to hold a public hearing, but I'd suggest that you sound the commission chambers to see if there is anybody that wants to provide any input.
Thank you. Any questions of staff? Yes.
Just, Bill, I'd sent you an email the other day about this, and just to make sure I'm clear, we've cleared up all of the deeds and property lines on this with Mr. McKellar. I know last year you said there was some confusion on that. And
yes, the area to the north of this property is an effluent treatment site with the sewerage plant. And we acquired about 20 or 25 parcels of property. Most of them were passed down from family member to family member in do-it-yourself meets and bounds surveys. So there was just there were a lot of confusing little parts to the property descriptions. There are 2 corrective deeds that we'll ask the chairman to sign that will be recorded first, that should correct any discrepancies with these properties. After those corrective deeds are filed, we'll go ahead and file the deeds, record the deeds for this exchange. And that should straighten things out.
Good. Thank you.
Any other questions? I'll open it for public hearing, although we don't have to. I will do that. Anyone from the public like to speak? Seeing none, close it. I'll have a
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes 5-0. Thank you very much. Public discussion items. Request to speak from Dr. Stephen Faberty, Senior, regarding Vero Beach Electric Utility.
Mr. Faraday is not here. I think that might
That probably
might have been where the note
note
I don't see
was.
Dr. here.
He's had surgery, and he will be back probably May 6th. That was just placed in the wrong spot. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Public notice items. Notice of special call meeting, April the 24th, 2008. A special call meeting would be held on Thursday, April the 24th, 2008 at 9 o'clock with respect to the source. That's quasi-judicial. Amendment, Indian River County Code Section 913.102B3 to lower the AM best rating requirements from A+ VII to A- VI for, that's 7 and 6, Roman numerals? Okay. For maintenance bonds, memorandum dated April the 14th, 2008, page 131. Amend section 303.33 and 303.35 of the Indian River County Code of Allowance Demolition Inspection and Reinspection Fees to be set by county resolution, memorandum dated April 15th, 2008, 132. This is legislative. And Imagine Schools request for special exception use approval of K-8 Charter School Facility, Low Key Inc., owner. Imagine Schools and MBV Engineering Inc., agents, located on 6000 4th Street, zoning clarification RS-3, residential single family up to 3 units per acre. Land use designation 1-2, low density residential. Memorandum dated April 14, 2008, 133. That's quasi-judicial. And D, finally, board consideration to formally designate a 1.3-mile segment of Old Dixie Highway south to CR 512 as a historic road. Memorandum dated April 16, 2008, page 134. This is administrative. Number 11, County Administrators Matters, Boys and Girls Club request.
Yes, the Boys and Girls Club has requested that we lease their property, lease a piece of property to them, and it's the old ambulance squad right across from the Freshman Learning Center. They've been trying to build a building, and they've been looking for a piece of property, and they think this would fit their needs. They're going to probably build a building of about, I know they've got a $500,000 endowment right now, and probably about $1 million building. They will need a long-term lease, and before we started drafting it, I wanted to make sure it was all right with the commission.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I think we're on the right track with this. It's a good collaborative partnership. I guess really the only thing I'd like to say, let's keep in mind the conversations that we have with the school district in our joint workshop that's kind of around that same property, kind of see if we can include some of what the Boys and Girls Club is doing in perhaps a larger scope of programs there when we enter into any negotiations, if at all, with the school district.
Okay.
I think this serves our purpose and their purpose well. I think it move forward.
Will we have to put any money into the building or any cost?
Right now, no. They need the land. We had to tear down the old ambulance squad. That occurred a couple of weeks ago. But right now, we don't anticipate it. What we will be doing is giving them the use of the land, and I think that'll be our donation.
Do you want a motion on that, Madam
Please, please.
Chair? Move to authorize the county administrator to move forward.
I second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes 5-0. Thank you very much. Moving on to utilities. Approval of bid award to IRC bid number 2008034, 16 Bryan Force, Main, and to Spoonbill Marsh Wetland Disposal Site, 12-inch reuse water main, extension from lateral G to U.S. Highway 1. Memorandum dated April 14, 2008, pages 136 to 160.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes 5-0. County Attorney's Matters. C. and Carey request to resolution accepting implied dedication of a 60-foot strip of land in Section 30, shown on the Fleming Grant plat of 1888, recorded in Brevard County in Plat Book 1, page 72, by S.B. Carter, now lying and being in Indian River County. Memorandum dated April the 15th, 2008, 161 to 206. Good morning.
Good morning.
Mr.
Greg
Attorney.
Mensing.
We have staff first, so please.
Madam Chairman, the subject of this 60-foot strip that was recorded in a plat in Brevard County in 1888 has been a matter of dispute between Mr. Mensing and Mr. Carey, who are neighbors adjoining the strip in Roseland. And in last year, each filed lawsuits against the sheriff with respect to that strip of land. Mr. Carey requested the court to declare the strip a public right-of-way in order the sheriff to cause clearing of vehicles, trash, debris, etc., fences, gates. Mr. Mensing requested that the court compel the sheriff to prevent trespassing on the 60-foot strip, and in both cases the court found that neither party had a clear legal right to the relief they were requesting and dismissed the cases. Mr. Carey had in the past requested an abandonment of that strip, which would have added it to the adjoining properties, and he has not pushed that abandonment request, and we as staff would not have supported it because if the strip is there, it could interfere with some implied easement rights of adjoining property owners. In any event, Mr. Carey has now requested that a resolution be adopted accepting that strip of land that's shown on the Fleming Grant plat of 1888 by S.B. Carter in Brevard County. The strip's bounded by lots 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14 on the northwest, and by lots 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19 on the southeast. And it's located at the southerly terminus of 129th Street. When this area became part of St. Lucie County, the plat was redrawn without these strips being shown as in the 1888 Carter plat, but with a notation that it was intended to replicate the Carter plat. And this area of Roseland has been subject to controversy for 2 decades. Mr. Mensing has claimed the strip based on a 1990 quitclaim deed recorded in 1994 from the grandson of one of 3 grantees from A.A. and Clara J. Berry in 1916. That quitclaim purportedly assigns contract rights between Berry and Kirchhoff to all unplatted lands in the Fleming Grant. But Mr. Carey points out that these strips were platted and that the 1916 Berry deed to Kirchhoff conveyed lots and not meets and bounds portions or strips of the Fleming Grant. Mr. Mensing has never been assessed nor paid taxes on the strips, and except as to any abutting lot owners, Florida statutes on platting extinguished any reversionary interest in platting streets as of July 1st, 1973, or almost 18 years before the quitclaim deed from Kirchhoff III to Mensing. The doctrine of laches would bar claims under assigned contracts rights that occurred years after the statutory limitation period on that claim. This is a request similar to some that the county recently adopted, accepting the dedication of an 8-acre park in Bureau Lake Estates, and a resolution in the year 2000 after a lawsuit we had with Mr. Driver, which accepted certain platted roads in the town site of Roseland, the plat of Warregan, and subdivisions 1 and 2 of Ambersand Beach, and the A.A. Berry subdivision. Adoption of a resolution accepting this strip as a public right-of-way could facilitate a future emergency connection between the southerly terminus of 129th and 130th Avenue. 130th Avenue presently dead ends into the North County Conservation Area, but the county does have a 20-foot deed from the General Development Company from 1969 that connects 130th Avenue to this 60-foot strip. Mr. Carey has prepared some exhibits for distribution at the meeting that are color keyed, and I think the easiest thing would be to just walk through those sheets. The first one just shows the general location map. The purple is the Mensing property, and the blue is the Curie property that surrounds it. The property in question lies to the north and is shown as a yellow strip. The next sheet, I want to make sure I can refer you to the proper pages. This would be 167 in the agenda. Shows the 1888 Carter plat of the Fleming Grant, Section 30 in Brevard County. And you can notice in the middle of the page there's a narrow strip of land running just north of the colored strips, and that's the strip of land at issue here. The subsequent page has the language from the plat that where the surveyor certifies that each lot contains 5 acres. The page 169 is the St. Lucie plat of the same area, and you can see there is no strip indicated between those lots as there was in the plat that it was purportedly copying, but there is a transcription which is shown on page 171, which talks about all references to books and pages refer to Brevard County records and section lines, and all boundary lines and main tracts are intended to be the same as shown on the Carter survey, but it can be seen that those strips are missing. And then the following sheet on page 172 shows a similar plat from 1942 depicting the strip, and the following page shows some notation that this survey was prepared by an engineer for the U.S. Naval Air Station in Jacksonville, and noting that typical lots are 330 by 660 containing 5 acres. There was this on page 174. There is a 1989 survey showing a 60-foot dirt road lying north of the Curie and Mensing property that was prepared by Hugh Smith, land surveyor. And in 1990, another survey identifying the 60-foot strip as not described for use or width per plat, but it was identified lying north of these properties. And it has similar references to the discrepancy between the Brevard County and the St. Lucie County plats. On page 178, there's a survey prepared by Rod Reed for Julian Consolidated that also depicts these strips. And on page 179, a survey prepared by Carter Associates that depicts the 60-foot strip lying north of the Mensing and Curie property. It's a very confusing area. The records are very confusing. We've been having disputes over this area for a long time. I think if you look at page 185, that gives you a pretty good overview of the vicinity, showing you page 129th Street and 130th Street coming down toward the North County Conservation Area. It identifies Mensing's Homestead and 3 lots of carry that surround it, and it's really the hashed strip lying north of those properties and extending into the North County Conservation Area that we're speaking about. I think the intent of Mr. Curie's request is to have the county accept the dedication by resolution. In the driver case, Judge Kenny said that there must be some formal proof of acceptance, either by resolution or by maintenance. We're not proposing to maintain it at this point, but if we do adopt a resolution accepting it, it will make the strip available for any future connections between 129th and 130th in emergency situations. It will verify the adjoining lot owner's access, and because of that, I'm recommending that you adopt the resolution, but Mr. Curie and Mensing are both here to speak to the issue. And the Sheriff's Attorney, Jim Harpering, had indicated that he wanted to speak to it as well, but I don't see him here. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you.
This is a matter that really should be before the circuit court. I've got some handouts here. I had requested this be continued so we have counsel present because I didn't receive the packet until Friday afternoon, knowing the whole details.
I would just note that this was on the March 18th Commission agenda, and we extended it at Mr. Mensing's request to today.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Fred.
Do you have a copy for our clerk reporter? She'll need a copy of everything.
Copies for...
Well, she'll need one.
I'll give her mine after.
After it's over, yeah, we'll see to it she has a copy.
We'll make sure she has one for her.
All right, let's start with the last handout, which was a copy of a survey from Carter, topographical survey done in 1990. At the time I purchased the property from Sembler, showing the buildings and so forth that were where they are located. Part of the issue here is that because of surveys based on the St. Lucie County plat, it was assumed that there was no road. You'll notice there's item 1, a CBS shed. It's 19.8 by 39.9 feet. That was on the tax collector rolls in 1964. A mobile home was on the rolls in 1965. Halfway between the mobile home and the shed is a septic system, which has a 1963 date on the lid. And that septic system is in the 60-foot right-of-way. The shed that we say was to be removed was in what we are now calling the 60-foot right-of-way. The time I acquired the property, there's a pole line indicated there, went through the center of the 60 feet. I contacted Florida Power and Light about it, and they did some research, and they said, no, that should be on the boundary line, and they moved it north. Mr. Carey acknowledged my ownership because we furnished him with 60-foot right-of-way across this easement from 129th Street to Lot 16. That item you don't have a copy of. You have a copy of a letter addressed to me October the 8th by last year from your attorney about the settlement of a lawsuit between myself and Indian River County, in which you have acknowledged you don't own the strip. Other parcels that are shown in deeds which Mr. Carey has furnished in his packet were transferred to you, and these pieces were not. The owner of the strip of land, which would be from 129th Street to the west, Mr. Dave Butler, has not been contacted about your activities in regard to this. And he should be contacted also. Now if we go to the court order which you were conveniently not provided with from Judge Hawley regarding Mr. Carey's dismissal, you'll notice that the plaintiff shall have 30 days to file an amended complaint. He had 30 days to go to the circuit court without court costs and file an action challenging Mr. Butler, myself, and whoever else had an interest in this. The county has denied ownership of this parcel, and it has been possessed in private control since long before 1971 with questionable plats. Your attorney, Mr. Plakowitz, on 10/27/03 signed a settlement agreement in which you agreed that you had, as Mr. Collins called it, leased out on the Kirchhoff deed. The history of the Kirchhoff deed, which has not been explained to you, Mr. Gene Roddenberry, as my attorney, went through steps to have August Kirchhoff III declared the lawful beneficiary of the Kirchhoff brothers who purchased the Fleming grant from A.A. Barry sometime in the area 1914-16. I haven't the year in my head clearly. That document is on file in the circuit court. So whatever Mr. Kirchhoff did, was done with a chain of title. I claim that we possess free and clear title to the piece of land from the center of 129th Street for a distance of 660 feet to the east. I also point out that in the lawsuit which you settled, you had closed the northern 20 feet of Lot 19 of A.A. Barry's subdivision, which is deeded to the county in 1963 by general development as a road right-of-way, so that access to the property, and that was an issue in the suit, and in that settlement you opened that to me on a non-exclusive easement from 130th Street to what you acknowledged was my property. If you were going to take this property, Mr. Carey is already in his abandonment advised Mrs. Seibert that he would give her $5,000 for a piece 30 feet by 330 feet long if he had it abandoned, and she acquired half of it, which would be the property in front of lot 16. So he has put a $10,000 value on property which is 60 by 660 feet, or 60 by 330 feet. He has placed a $10,000 value on that land. I have the issue of the concrete block building. It's been there since before 1971, septic tank, and so forth that have been there. And these issues need to be addressed, and I feel that you would be wise to reject Mr. Collins' efforts and tell Mr. Carey if he has a case, spend his money, not the taxpayers' money, because it's not going to end here with a resolution. The county's going to be in court if there's a resolution. Let Mr. Carey bear the bills and let the county just step aside. There's nothing else that I can say. I'll answer any questions.
Thank you. Next, who would like?
Mr. Collins, do you have anything you'd like to say to that, about that? Or?
Only if you have questions about it. I'm familiar with everything he's talking about,
But you think you're right?
yes.
Okay.
Mr. Collins?
Yes, sir.
You indicated that Jim Harping had voiced an interest in speaking on this?
Because the sheriff was sued twice on this matter, Mr. Harping did want to be here to, I guess, speak the sheriff's position or what his interest in it is.
I would like to know if the sheriff's attorney has a different opinion than our attorney. If not that we'd get differing opinions from attorneys, but either one. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Harper. Thank you. It's a pleasure to see all of you, Mr. Baird, Mr. Collins, commissioners, and what maybe objectively might be considered a fascinating case study in property law if we weren't all so intimately involved in this. Sheriff has had to litigate a couple of issues in regards to this. First, dealing with whether or not we should be required to enforce public access rights as to whether or not it's a public road, and then in the alternative, defending a writ of mandamus requiring us or requesting the circuit court. This was filed by Mr. Mensing, requesting the circuit court to ask to require the sheriff's office to issue a trespass warning against Mr. Carey in regards to the property. Our interest in this matter doesn't have anything to do or doesn't fall one way or another with Mr. Carey or Mr. Mensing. Our interest is really has been in resolving the issue as to who actually has a proprietary interest in this, because we are obligated on some level and at some point in time to enforce the laws of the state of Florida if that issue arises. And as Mr. Collins, appropriately pointed out, the history of this is not particularly clear, at least to the casual observer, and our interest is in who does have a possessory interest in this particular property. If it's determined to be public, if it's accepted as public, then we obviously have an obligation to enforce the laws of the state, require that free and clear access be granted to the public for this particular strip of land. In the alternative, if it's not determined to be a public road, then the question is who owns that property and whose rights are we obligated to enforce in the context of trespass or exclusion. So we've unfortunately had to litigate this twice, once in regards to a suit by Mr. Carey and once in regards to a suit by Mr. Mensing. Mr. Carey, at the last hearing that we had in circuit court before Judge Hawley, and I believe it's part of your paperwork, was given the opportunity to refile, naming the county and anybody else that he felt was appropriate. But to date, that obviously hasn't happened, and it appears as if the resolution of this issue is going to be before the board. We're simply going to follow the lead of whatever the board determines. If you accept the request, if the county does go ahead and accept this as public land, public right-of-way, then we're going to enforce the law as it would relate to that decision. But it has been unclear to us, and certainly we were not the governmental agency or entity that would decide the property rights in this particular case. It's either going to be the county or the circuit court. So our interest really had to do with trying to not infringe on anybody's rights while essentially keep the peace, which I would say conservatively has been somewhat difficult,
Madam Chair,
given the
given the interest of the parties involved.
Well, I thank you for your effort. I'm glad you're here today.
Thank you.
Wesley?
Just the long and short, you're good with if we pass the resolution? We don't have an interest in it. If you do, we'll proceed accordingly. If you don't, then we'll hold our breath and proceed accordingly. Thank you.
Next, would you like to speak?
Good morning, Madam Chairman, other commissioners. Name is C.N. Curie. Just a few points that are mostly legal points, and I believe Mr. Collins, I should actually defer some of those to him, but I will bring them up. First, when anybody has purchased a property in that area, as the original platting said, it is 5-acre lots. They are 330 by 660. There was nothing else ever indicated for sale from 1888. Nothing was sold to the Kirchhoffs other than lots. The strips were not involved in that sale. By the fact that you have a strip that runs, in some cases, a couple of miles and connects lots, it's fairly obvious that they're not intended as runways, not in 1888. So they must have been roadways. It's an assumption that you pretty well have to make. Surveying at that time, 2 parallel lines with a reasonable spread between them constituted a road. Those haven't disappeared in the plats that came out of St. Lucie County simply because when the surveyors go out there, and you have at least 5 surveyors in this package that have acknowledged those strips by finding them on the ground. They do exist. When Mr. Mensing or the Semblers or anybody else that owned that Lot 15, which Mr. Mensing now owns, purchased it, they did not purchase anything beyond the northerly boundary, which ended at 660 feet from the southerly boundary. It is the same as every other lot in there. Therefore, the person who bought the property, built on the property, or encroached on a roadway did so at their own risk. And as such, the risk and the liability follow with the person that purchased the property. I don't believe Mr. Mensing could present a deed that shows that he had 720 feet, which would include the 60 foot. He only bought 330 by 660. If there was an error there, then he bought the error. As far as the county not having accepted this, there are a number of strips in there, and this has been a litigious situation, say from 1915 on. But several of these things have been resolved by the action of the commission in accepting various and sundry parts of these strips, parks, roadways, etc. As far as Mr. Butler's involvement in this, Mr. Butler owns Lot 10, which if you look on one of your sheets, you'll see Lot 10 is to the westerly edge of 129th Street. Mr. Butler had expressed to me at some time, he says, "What a mess. How on earth do I get into my property?" Well, I reminded Mr. Butler that in this state, there is no such thing anymore as a landlocked piece of property. That one way or another, he would be able to get there, and as I understand it, and again, I defer to Mr. Collins, when these issues appear, the most direct route, even though it may only be 20 feet wide, is provided, even if it's over somebody else's property. In this case, we don't have to go there. This access has been provided to Mr. Butler in 1888. It's a matter of acknowledging it. As far as another internal lot to the easterly terminus of 129th, directly north of Lot 15, that lot being internal had 2 little flags of 35 feet, and as such, that man had been denied building more than one residence on that lot. This, again, would resolve that issue. It's an internal lot. but the roadway actually goes right past it, and it would resolve his issues. This is not an issue for Mr. Carey. This is an issue that would resolve quite a number of problems all at one time. And at this point, it's been presented. When I recognized a couple of years ago that my request for abandonment was really out of place, that roadway should be a public roadway, it should provide emergency access, and it should provide access to those internal lots. At that point, I've done nothing with it. I've let it sit. And I don't see any point in continuing with that kind of a request because it is actually not in my best interest other than to gain access to a historical entry on the easterly side of my properties. Being that the property I have is remaining 15 acres, generally this county requires, if at all possible, a secondary access for emergency. That would be the secondary access, and that was the intention of gaining control over the 60-foot northerly of Lot 16, which abuts Mrs. Seibert. Yes, I did offer Mrs. Seibert money for it. It was simply to clear the issue. Her comment to me was, well, if you do that, then I would own it. I don't need any more tax. Okay, I'll buy it from you. It's simply a matter of clearing an issue and gaining that what I felt was a necessary second access to a large parcel. Other than that, I would defer to Mr. Collins for a reading on a lot as to what a person buys and whether there are encroachments that have been constructed prior to their purchase. Defer to him for a reading on that. Other than that, I am available for questions. Anybody?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept staff's recommendation.
Second.
Having discussion on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Your attention to this matter.
Thank you. Commissioner O'Brien, Florida Forever funding and future FCT funding, memorandum dated April 16, 2008, pages 207 to 216.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. When we put this on the agenda last week, it appeared that funding for the Florida Forever, which is where the county gets a lot of our matching funds from for our conservation land purchases, that the state legislature was not going to fund Florida Forever this year.
And then look what happens.
And then just just the threat of this coming up must have scared them into doing the right thing. So most of this is probably not relevant to us right now, but there is one issue just kind of for discussion at this point. One of the proposals is to move the Florida Communities Trust, the funding from Florida Communities Trust under the Department of Community Affairs over to the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. And myself and George Glenn, the assistant attorneys, have been looking at this. We're not quite sure why the legislature is making that move. We've had a very good, successful relationship with Florida Communities Trust. They've been a partner with us on many of our land acquisition projects. So I guess at this point, we don't really need to take any action. I just bring it to your attention that we'll be watching this. And I don't know, George, is there anything we need to add at this point, or we?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Perhaps the best thing is once it gets out of committee, and if it is on the governor's desk, a resolution to urge him to sign it perhaps would be appropriate, because I don't believe he signed the legislation, if in fact the legislation exists right now. And if it does, we should have an idea whether they're going to merge the two entities.
You're still up there chatting over this, I think.
Good morning, Commissioners. George Glenn, Assistant County Attorney. I called Stan Bayfield's office this morning. Apparently it is still on the table, removing the FCT program from the DCA to the DEP. And my understanding is that they're actually putting that language in the successor program to Florida Forever. So I think that would be a very difficult issue for the governor to veto, because he would have to veto basically the entire successor program for Florida Forever. My understanding is that it will go to the full House for consideration probably at the end of this week. And if this board finds that the policy of the county is that we've had such a successful relationship with the DCA using FCT, then it might be worthwhile to write a letter to our representatives, our delegation, informing them that before it goes to a full vote of the House and the Senate that whatever the policy of this board is. But the problem is that they stick it in the successor program to Florida Forever. I think that makes it very hard to veto out, because you'd have to basically veto the entire program.
So what, I guess at this point then, two things. One is a resolution or letter of support to continue the funding, and a second, or part of that resolution is to keep the Florida Communities Trust as part of the DCA program.
Right. That if this board makes the determination that we've had a very successful relationship with the DCA, that we'd like to continue to have that successful relationship with the DCA, that the county would not want to see the program shifted to the DEP, then it would seem the best course of action would maybe to write a letter or resolution to our delegation telling them that we would like, in whatever successor program comes out, we would like to see that the FCT remains with the Department of Community Affairs.
So I'll make that as a motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, George.
All right. Solid Waste Disposal District, we're moving along.
Move to approve the March 18th minutes.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Approval of bid award for IRC bid 2008017, Fellsmere Customer Convenience Center.
So moved, Madam Chair.
I'll
Have a
second it.
second?
I got a question.
All right. Good morning.
Good morning. Commissioners, Iman Shementa, Solid Waste Disposal District. This is for the bid award to Barth Construction for the construction of the new Fellsmere Convenience Center. This is a 20-plus-year-old facility, and according with our master plan, we went for a design of a new facility, and again, we're at a point of award.
Yeah, my question is quickly, if you could, but where do we spend $1,850,000 to build a transfer station? I mean, I've been to the transfer stations, and it must be something new on this one to cost that much, or does that? I mean, that's the bid for construction, right? So
a lot of that's roadways and drainage right now. What are we going to? We're trying to move it off of the back.
We swapped property, I know, didn't we? Back and but so that's the road and everything.
Turning lanes.
Turning lanes. There's going to be all of that involved in that because you get traffic back up there, and it's the expansion of the facility. A lot of it's site work too.
Okay.
A
lot of site work.
Okay.
Also, compared to our current centers where you go through and there's just one wall for the residents to drop things off, this facility is actually looking at a loop where there'll actually be 3 walls. And we're also accommodating these to be to the large trailer type of setup, so we'll be able to have less trips back and forth from the center.
How long a drive do you have going in there? I mean, a driveway or road or whatever to go back into the.
As in how far north
how far back did we go? I don't recall.
I don't know, but it was. We bought 5 acres in there, so it's a substantial piece off the back of the.
Yeah. Okay, I'm happy.
What we should maybe do is send all the commissioners a kind of a diagram of the layout.
I can go look at it, Joe. It just seemed like a lot of money for a transfer station. I visualize the transfer stations I've been at. You pull in a little hump, there's some stuff to drop some stuff in. I'm trying to think, where do we spend $1,850,000? But I think you've explained it. I can go look at that. I appreciate. I'm ready for the question.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And we are done this morning. Meeting is closed.